The rain hammered against the windows of Ralph's diner like angry fists demanding entry. Sarah wiped down the same coffee-stained counter for the third time in 10 minutes, her eyes drifting to the clock above the kitchen pass. 11:37 p.m. Another dead Tuesday night in a town where excitement came in the form of a new flavor at the gas station's Slurpee machine. She'd been working double shifts for 3 weeks straight, pulling herself through community college one diner's paycheck at a time. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in that familiar sickly yellow glow that made even fresh apple pie look like it had seen better days. Her feet ached in shoes held together with duct tape. The bell above the door hadn't chimed in over an hour. Just Sarah, the hum of the coffee maker, and the relentless drumming of rain against glass. She was about to flip the sign to closed when something moved in the parking lot. At first, she thought it was just shadows playing tricks on her tired eyes. But then she saw it clearly, a small golden blur darting between the puddles, soaked to the bone and shivering. A dog. A very lost, very wet dog. Sarah grabbed her jacket and pushed through the door into the storm. The cold hit her like a slap, rain immediately soaking through her uniform. But there it was, huddled against the dumpster, a golden retriever puppy that couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Its fur was matted and dark with rainwater, but those eyes, those impossibly sweet brown eyes, looked up at her with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Hey there, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, crouching down slowly. The puppy's tail gave the faintest wag. No collar, no tags. Just a scared little creature who'd somehow ended up alone in the worst storm the county had seen all year. She scooped the trembling bundle into her arms, feeling tiny heartbeats racing against her chest. The puppy was surprisingly heavy for its size, and as she carried it inside, she noticed something that made her pause. This wasn't some stray mutt. The bone structure, the coat quality, even soaked and disheveled, this was an expensive dog. Purebred. The kind that came with papers and price tags that made minimum wage workers like Sarah do double takes. Back inside the diner's warmth, she grabbed a stack of clean towels and gently dried the puppy's fur. As the golden coat began to fluff up, her suspicions were confirmed. This was a show-quality animal, probably worth more than she made in 6 months. The puppy's nails were recently trimmed, its teeth white and healthy. Someone was missing this little guy, and they were probably frantic about it. She used her spare aprons and old towels to make the little creature a warming nest in the back booth. The puppy immediately understood and dove in, curling into a ball, but those eyes never left her face. There was intelligence there, and something else, trust. Despite everything this little creature had been through, it was choosing to trust her. Sarah pulled out her phone and snapped a few photos. She'd post them on social media, check the local lost pet groups, maybe put up some flyers around town. Someone had to be looking for this beautiful animal. As she scrolled through Facebook groups typing out a post about the found puppy, she didn't notice the sleek black sedan that pulled into the parking lot. The bell chimed, and Sarah looked up to see a man stepping out of the rain. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair slicked back from the storm and a face that belonged in a magazine spread. But it wasn't his looks that made her breath catch. It was his clothes. Even soaked from the rain, she could tell his coat cost more than her car. His shoes, despite being waterlogged, were clearly handmade leather. And when he pulled out his phone to check something, she caught a glimpse of a watch that probably had its own insurance policy. He looked around the diner with the careful assessment of someone used to evaluating spaces, investments, opportunities. His eyes swept over the cracked vinyl booths, the outdated fixtures, the coffee machine that had seen better decades. Sarah felt suddenly self-conscious about her stained uniform, her messy ponytail, the general shabbiness of everything around her. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice carried the kind of confidence that money bought. "I'm looking for my puppy, about 6 months old." Someone told me they saw a golden retriever pup running toward this area. Sarah's heart jumped. She glanced toward the back booth where the puppy was sleeping. What's his name? Bentley, the man said as his expression softened. He got spooked during the storm and bolted from our property. I've been driving around for 3 hours looking for him. As if summoned by his name, the puppy's head popped up from the makeshift bed. The moment he saw the man, his entire body began to wiggle with excitement. That was all the confirmation Sarah needed. Bentley! The man's voice cracked with relief. The puppy scrambled out of the booth and launched himself across the diner floor, practically flying into the man's arms. The reunion was immediate and intense, all desperate licks and gentle murmurs of, "I thought I lost you, buddy." Sarah watched the scene unfold, feeling a strange mix of happiness and loss. She'd only known the puppy for an hour, but already she'd gotten attached. There was something about rescuing a helpless creature that created an instant bond. The man looked up at her, his eyes bright with gratitude and something else she couldn't quite identify. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to me." "I'm just glad he's safe," Sarah replied, meaning every word. "He's a beautiful dog. I could tell right away he belonged to someone who cared about him." The man studied her face with the same intensity he'd used to evaluate the diner. But this time his expression was different, curious, interested. "I'm Liam, by the way. Liam Richardson." The name hit her like cold water. Richardson. Everyone in the county knew that name. Richardson Industries owned half the commercial real estate within a 50-mile radius. The Richardson family had built shopping centers, office complexes, and luxury developments across 3 states. And now one of them was standing in Murphy's diner at midnight, cradling a puppy and looking at her like she'd just performed a miracle. "Sarah," she managed to say, her voice smaller than intended. "Sarah Davis." Liam shifted Bentley to one arm and reached into his jacket, pulling out a wallet that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Please let me give you something for taking care of him, for staying open late, for getting him dry and safe." Sarah shook her head automatically. "I couldn't take money for that. Anyone would have done the same thing." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. Not everyone would have braved a storm for a lost animal. Not everyone would have used their own towels, their own warmth, their own time to help a creature in need. Liam's eyes narrowed slightly, not with suspicion, but with something like fascination. In his world, people always took the money. They took whatever they could get, often without even providing the service. Yet here was this waitress in a rundown diner, refusing payment for an act of genuine kindness. "You work here often?" he asked, his tone carefully casual. "Every night," Sarah said, then immediately felt foolish for admitting to her complete lack of a social life. "I mean, I'm in school during the day, so what are you studying?" The question caught her off guard. Men like Liam Richardson didn't typically engage in small talk with diner waitresses. They conducted business, made transactions, moved on to more important things. Yet here he was, asking about her education like her answer actually mattered. "Veterinary medicine," she said, then gestured toward Bentley. "I want to help animals. Always have." Something shifted in Liam's expression. It was subtle, but Sarah caught it. A flicker of surprise, maybe even respect. "That's a challenging field," he said. "Expensive program." Ugh. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. Of course he would know about the costs. People like him knew the price of everything, especially education. They also knew that people like her often couldn't afford such luxuries. "I'm managing," she said, lifting her chin slightly. It wasn't entirely true, but her pride wouldn't let her admit to struggling in front of someone who probably spent more on a single dinner than she made in a week. Liam nodded, keeping that intense but respectful gaze. Bentley had settled contentedly in his arms, occasionally licking his chin with the devotion only a dog could show. The storm outside seemed to be intensifying, rain lashing against the windows with renewed fury. "Listen," Liam said, his voice taking on a different quality. "I know you said you won't take money, but I'd like to do something to thank you properly. This little guy means the world to me." There was something in the way he said it that made Sarah look at him more closely. Beneath the expensive clothes and obvious wealth, she saw something unexpected. Loneliness. The same kind of isolation she recognized in herself, though his probably came from being surrounded by people who wanted things from him rather than being surrounded by no one at all. "Really, it's okay," she said softly. "I'm just happy he's going home safe." But Liam wasn't ready to leave it at that, and as Sarah would soon discover, when a Richardson wanted to express gratitude, they didn't think small. They thought in ways that could change lives, shift destinies, and turn ordinary Tuesday nights into something extraordinary. The rain continued to fall, the flickering diner's neon contrasting with the darkness outside, and somewhere in that moment between gratitude and possibility, both their worlds were about to change forever. Liam glanced at his watch, then at the storm raging outside. "Actually," he said, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty that seemed foreign to someone of his stature, "I don't think I should be driving in this weather. Not with Bentley. He's already been through enough tonight." Sarah followed his gaze to the windows, where the rain had turned into sheets of water so thick she could barely see the parking lot lights. The wind was howling now, rattling the old building's frame in a way that made her wonder about the structural integrity of a place that had been serving coffee since the Kennedy administration. Liam shook his head, stroking Bentley's damp fur. "I've been driving these roads for 3 hours already. Some of them are starting to flood." He looked at her with an expression that was part apologetic, part hopeful. "Would it be completely inappropriate if I asked to wait here until this passes?" "I'll pay you for your time, of course." Sarah felt a flutter of panic. Having Liam Richardson sit in her diner for an extended period was like having a celebrity show up at a high school talent show. Everything about the place would seem even more shabby, more inadequate under his scrutiny. But looking at Bentley's exhausted face and listening to the storm's fury, she knew there really wasn't a choice. "Of course," she heard herself saying. "I was going to be here anyway. Coffee machine's still hot if you want some." "That would be perfect," Liam said, settling into one of the corner booths with Bentley curled against his chest. Even sitting in the worn vinyl seat, he somehow managed to look elegant. It was like watching someone make a throne out of a folding chair. Sarah busied herself behind the counter, grateful for something to do with her hands. As she poured coffee into 2 clean mugs, she became hyper-aware of every sound the ancient machine made, every crack in the ceramic, every imperfection in the diner's tired interior. Through the corner of her eye, she watched Liam examine his surroundings with the same careful attention he'd shown earlier. But this time, his expression was different. Instead of the calculating assessment of a businessman, there was something almost wistful in his gaze. He was looking at the hand-painted menu board, the collection of local sports team photos on the walls, the jar of homemade cookies by the register. "How long have you worked here?" he asked when she brought the coffee over. 2 years, Sarah said, sliding into the seat across from him. It felt strange sitting with a customer like this, but the normal rules seemed suspended by the storm and the unusual circumstances. "Since I started college." Liam wrapped his hands around the mug and Sarah noticed his fingers. They were clean, manicured, but there were small scars across his knuckles. Working hands, despite the obvious wealth. "Do you like it? The work, I mean?" The question surprised her with its directness. Most people asked about school, about her plans, about anything other than her current reality. "It's honest work," she said carefully. "The people who come in here, they're good people, working people. They tip what they can, say please and thank you, clean up after themselves mostly. "That's not what I asked," Liam said gently, his eyes meeting hers over the rim of his mug. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. When was the last time someone had actually listened to her answers instead of just waiting for their turn to speak? "No," she admitted. "I don't like it, but I'm grateful for it. There's a difference." Liam nodded slowly, and Sarah realized he understood that distinction in a way that surprised her. "I know what you mean," he said quietly. Before Sarah could ask what he meant by that, Bentley stirred in his arms and let out a soft whine. The puppy's eyes were droopy with exhaustion, but every few minutes he would lift his head to make sure Liam was still there. "He's usually more energetic," Liam explained, noticing her watching. "Tonight scared him." "How did he get out?" Sarah asked, then immediately regretted the question. It felt too personal, too much like prying into the private life of someone who probably valued privacy above almost everything else. But Liam didn't seem to mind. If anything, his expression grew softer. "Construction crew left a gate open at the property. We're renovating the east wing of the house, and with all the noise and chaos, he just bolted. I've never seen him run so fast." His voice carried a note of self-recrimination. "I should have been watching him more carefully." "You can't control everything," Sarah said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "Sometimes things just happen." Liam looked at her with renewed interest. Spoken like someone who's learned that lesson the hard way, Sarah felt her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to being seen so clearly, to having her casual observations treated like wisdom worth considering. "My dad used to say that life has its own agenda and our job is just to keep up." "Smart man, your father." "He was," Sarah said, the past tense slipping out naturally. "He would have liked you bringing Bentley in from the storm. He always said you could judge a person's character by how they treated animals." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, the diner felt like a pocket of calm. Liam sipped his coffee thoughtfully while Bentley dozed against his chest, and Sarah found herself studying this unlikely picture. The wealthy businessman in his expensive clothes holding a sleeping puppy with the tenderness of someone who understood what it meant to be vulnerable. "This is good coffee," Liam said eventually, breaking the quiet. Sarah laughed, a real laugh that surprised them both. "No, it's not. It's terrible coffee. But it's hot and it's caffeinated, which is about all anyone expects from this diner at midnight." Liam's lips curved into what might have been the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "You're right. It is terrible. But somehow that makes it perfect for a night like this." There was something in his tone that made Sarah look at him more closely. Beneath the polished exterior, she glimpsed something she recognized. The same bone-deep tiredness she felt after particularly long days. The same sense of being caught between who you were and who the world expected you to be. "Can I ask you something?" she said, emboldened by the intimacy of the storm and the late hour. Liam nodded, his attention focused entirely on her. "Do you always drive around looking for lost dogs yourself? Don't you have people who could do that for you?" The question hung in the air between them, more loaded than she'd intended. But Liam didn't seem offended. Instead, he looked down at Bentley, his expression growing contemplative. "I do have people," he said slowly. "People who handle everything from scheduling meetings to buying groceries. But Bentley isn't a business transaction, he's—" Liam paused, searching for the right words. "He's the only thing in my life that doesn't want anything from me except for me to throw a tennis ball and scratch behind his ears." The honesty in his voice caught Sarah off guard. She'd expected a deflection, maybe a polite non-answer. Instead, she got a glimpse into a loneliness that wealth couldn't touch. "That sounds lonely," she said softly. "It is," Liam admitted, and the simplicity of the admission was somehow more powerful than any elaborate explanation could have been. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the storm rage outside while Bentley slept peacefully between them. Sarah found herself stealing glances at Liam, trying to reconcile the vulnerable man sitting across from her with everything she thought she knew about people like him. The Richardson name was synonymous with success, power, the kind of ruthless business acumen that built empires. Yet here was Liam, holding a sleeping puppy and sharing coffee with a waitress because both of them understood what it meant to be alone. The lights flickered suddenly and both of them looked up at the ceiling with concern. "Generator?" Liam asked. "Hopefully," Sarah said, though she wasn't entirely sure the old building had a backup power system. "The electrical in this place is about as reliable as everything else." As if summoned by her words, the lights flickered again, stayed off for a heart-stopping moment, then came back on with a buzz that sounded distinctly unhealthy. "Maybe we should find some candles," Liam suggested, his practical side emerging, "just in case." Sarah nodded and headed toward the kitchen, returning with a handful of votive candles and a lighter. As she distributed them around their table, she became aware of how this must look. A midnight candlelit scene in an empty diner, two strangers brought together by chance and a storm. It felt like the beginning of a story, though she couldn't imagine what kind. "Better?" Liam said as she lit the last candle. The warm glow softened the diner's harsh edges, making even the cracked vinyl and faded photographs look almost romantic. That's when the lights went out completely, plunging them into the gentle dance of candlelight and the sound of rain against glass. In the flickering shadows, with Bentley sleeping peacefully and the storm creating a cocoon of isolation around them, Sarah felt something shift. This wasn't just about a lost dog anymore. This was about two people discovering that sometimes the most unexpected encounters could illuminate parts of yourself you'd forgotten existed. The candlelight transformed everything. Shadows danced across the walls, and the familiar diner felt like an entirely different place, intimate, almost magical. Sarah found herself studying Liam's face in the golden glow, noticing details she'd missed before. The way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled. The small scar above his left eyebrow that spoke of childhood adventures. The way he held Bentley with such careful tenderness, as if the puppy were made of spun glass. "This is probably the longest I've sat still in months," Liam said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Something about the darkness invited confession, made secrets feel safer. "When you're always moving, you don't have to think as much," Sarah replied, surprising herself with her understanding. She knew that feeling, the way constant motion could drown out the questions that surfaced in quiet moments. Liam's eyes met hers across the flickering light. "Exactly." He shifted slightly, adjusting Bentley's position without waking him. "What about you? What do you think about during the quiet times?" Sarah considered the question, turning it over like a smooth stone. "Whether I'm strong enough," she said finally. "Whether I can actually make it through vet school, whether I can handle seeing animals suffer, whether I'm fooling myself about what I'm capable of. And what conclusion do you reach?" She laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "Depends on the day. Tonight, sitting here with you and Bentley, I feel like maybe I am strong enough. Last week, when I had to choose between buying textbooks and paying the electric bill, I wasn't so sure." Liam was quiet for a long moment, his fingers absently stroking Bentley's fur. "I've never had to make that choice," he said. "Between necessities, I mean. I've made hard choices, but they were different kinds of hard." "Like what?" Sarah asked, then quickly added, "If you don't mind me asking." "Like whether to close a factory that's been losing money for 5 years, knowing it'll put 300 people out of work. Like whether to buy out a family business that's struggling, knowing the family will hate me for it even though it might be their only option." He paused, looking down at Bentley. Like whether to trust someone who might be interested in me or in my bank account. The last comment hung heavy in the candlelit air. Sarah felt a flush of something, embarrassment maybe, or recognition. Is that what you think? That I'm interested in your money? Liam looked up sharply. No, he said immediately. That's what makes this so unusual. You won't even let me pay you for helping Bentley. In my experience, that's not how people usually react to finding out who I am. How do they usually react? They get very friendly very quickly. Suddenly everyone wants to buy me dinner, introduce me to their daughters, pitch me their business ideas. His voice carried a weariness that made Sarah's chest ache. Or they get intimidated and stop looking me in the eye. Sarah realized she was looking directly into his eyes as he spoke, had been for most of their conversation. Well, I can't afford to buy you dinner. I don't have any daughters to introduce, and my only business idea is surviving until graduation. And you're still looking at me like I'm just a person, aren't you? The simplicity of the question seemed to catch him off guard. He stared at her for a moment, then laughed, a real laugh that transformed his entire face. When was the last time someone asked me that? I'm asking now. Yes, he said, his voice soft but certain. I'm just a person. A person who's very good at making money and very bad at making friends. Sarah felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Well, you're not bad at taking care of dogs. The Bentley doesn't care about my portfolio performance. Smart dog. They fell into comfortable silence again, but it felt different now. Deeper. The storm outside seemed to be lessening slightly, though the rain still drummed steadily against the windows. Sarah found herself hoping it would last a little longer, keep them in this bubble of candlelight and unexpected honesty. Can I tell you something? Liam said suddenly. Of course. I haven't enjoyed a conversation this much in years, maybe ever. Sarah felt her heart skip. It's probably just the storm. Emergency situations make everything feel more intense. Maybe, Liam agreed. Or maybe it's because you're the first person in a very long time who's talked to me like I'm worth knowing for reasons that have nothing to do with what I can do for them. The candle between them flickered, casting dancing shadows across his face. Sarah wanted to say something profound, something worthy of the moment, but all she could manage was, "You are worth knowing." "So are you," he replied, and the way he said it made her believe it might actually be true. Bentley stirred in his sleep, making a soft sound that was part whine, part sigh. Both Sarah and Liam looked down at him with the indulgent smiles that puppies somehow always inspired. "He's dreaming," Sarah observed. "Probably about tennis balls and bacon," Liam said fondly. "Simple pleasures." "There's something to be said for simple pleasures," Sarah agreed. "Sometimes I think we complicate everything unnecessarily." Says the woman studying veterinary medicine while working nights at a diner. Sarah laughed. Okay, fair point. But that's different. That's complicated by necessity, not by choice. And what would you choose if you could choose anything? The question was so unexpected, so earnest, that Sarah found herself actually considering it instead of deflecting with humor or practicality. A small practice somewhere quiet, she said slowly. Maybe in a town like this one. Somewhere I could know all my patients by name, where people brought their animals because they trusted me, not because I was the only option available. That sounds perfect, Liam said, and she could hear in his voice that he meant it. What about you, if you could choose anything? Liam was quiet for so long Sarah wondered if he'd heard her. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I'd choose to matter to someone, really matter. Not as a business partner or a financial opportunity, but as a person. The raw vulnerability in his admission made Sarah's throat tight. She reached across the table without thinking, covering his hand with hers. His skin was warm, slightly rough in a way that surprised her. You matter to Bentley, she said softly. And apparently, he said, turning his hand palm up so their fingers interlaced, I'm starting to matter to you. Sarah's breath caught. She should pull her hand away, remind herself that this was temporary, that when the storm passed, he would return to his world and she would return to hers. But his fingers were warm and strong around hers, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't feel alone. The feeling is mutual, she whispered. They sat like that, hands joined across the small table, watching the candles burn lower while Bentley slept peacefully between them. The storm continued its assault on the windows, but inside their circle of light, everything felt still and safe and possible. I should probably check the weather, Liam said eventually, though he made no move to release her hand or reach for his phone. I probably, Sarah agreed, also making no move to break the connection. In a minute. But as the minutes ticked by and neither of them moved to check anything beyond the warm pressure of joined hands and the steady rise and fall of Bentley's breathing, Sarah began to understand that this night was becoming something neither of them had expected. Something that would be impossible to forget even after the storm passed and reality returned. She thought about the photos she'd taken of Bentley earlier, still unsent on her phone. She could have posted them immediately, could have had the reunion happen within an hour of finding the dog. Instead, some instinct had made her hesitate, made her want to be certain before she sent a beloved pet back into the world. Now she wondered if that instinct had been about more than just being thorough. Maybe part of her had known even then that this encounter was meant to unfold exactly as it had. That sometimes the most important meetings happen not in boardrooms or classrooms, but in the quiet spaces between one life and another, illuminated by candlelight, and witnessed only by sleeping dogs in the patient rain. The candle flames wavered as another gust of wind shook the building, but neither Sarah nor Liam seemed to notice. Their conversation had taken on the quality of something precious, each word carefully chosen and deeply meant. The ordinary diner had become a sanctuary, holding them in a space where wealth and poverty mattered less than the simple act of being truly seen by another person. I keep thinking about what you said earlier, Sarah murmured, her thumb unconsciously tracing across his knuckles. About people getting friendly very quickly when they find out who you are. Liam's expression grew thoughtful. It's not their fault, really. Money changes the dynamic of every interaction, whether you want it to or not. People calculate what they can gain, or they assume I'm calculating what I can gain from them. That must be exhausting. It is. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to meet someone who had no idea about my family, my company, any of it. To just be judged on whether I'm kind or funny or interesting as a person. Sarah smiled softly. Well, for what it's worth, you failed miserably at being just a regular person tonight. Liam's eyebrows shot up. I did? Absolutely. Regular people don't drive around for 3 hours in dangerous weather looking for their dogs. Regular people don't sit in dingy diners past midnight making small talk with waitresses. And they definitely don't hold sleeping puppies like they're the most precious thing in the world. She squeezed his hand gently. You're terrible at being ordinary. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. You care too much to be ordinary. It shows in everything you do. Liam was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. My father always said caring too much was a weakness in business. That emotional attachment clouded judgment. Maybe that's true in business, Sarah said. But this isn't business, this is life. The distinction hit him like a revelation. You're right. I've been treating everything like a transaction for so long I forgot there was a difference. Bentley shifted in his sleep, stretching one tiny paw before settling back into contentment. The gesture was so innocent, so trusting that both Sarah and Liam smiled automatically. He really loves you, Sarah observed. You can see it in the way he relaxes completely when you're holding him. I got him 3 months ago, Liam admitted. After my last relationship ended badly, I thought maybe having something that needed me would help with the loneliness. Did it work? Better than I expected, but tonight, watching him trust you immediately even though he'd never met you, I realized something. He doesn't just need me. He needs kindness, period. From anyone willing to give it. Liam looked at her meaningfully, just like people do. Sarah felt a flutter of recognition. You're talking about more than dogs now. I'm talking about connection, real connection. The kind that doesn't come with conditions or expectations. His voice dropped lower. The kind I haven't felt in years until tonight. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Sarah felt her heart racing, torn between the magnetic pull of his honesty and the practical voice in her head reminding her of all the reasons this couldn't lead anywhere. Liam, she began, but he shook his head gently. I know what you're going to say. Different worlds, different lives, this is just one night. And you're right, but that doesn't make it less real. Sarah's resolve wavered. It doesn't make it practical either. Since when is anything worthwhile practical? He studied her face in the candlelight. You're working yourself to exhaustion to become a veterinarian because you want to help animals. That's not practical. It's beautiful, but it's not practical. That's different. How? She struggled to find an answer that didn't sound hollow. Because that's about my future, my career. This isn't about feelings that don't have anywhere to go. What if they did have somewhere to go? The question was so quiet she almost missed it. When she looked up, his eyes were intense, hopeful, vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want this to end when the storm passes. I'm saying I want to know what happens next. Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. Next? Next, tomorrow, next week. I want to know if you got the textbooks or paid the electric bill. I want to know if your classes are going well, if you're getting enough sleep, if you're happy. His words came faster now, as if he was afraid she'd stop him. I want to take you to dinner somewhere that serves better coffee than this place. I want to meet your friends, see where you live, understand what makes you laugh when you're not exhausted from working double shifts. Liam, you don't understand. My life isn't glamorous. I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat. My car is held together with prayer and duct tape. My idea of a nice dinner is when I can afford the soup and sandwich combo instead of just the soup. Do you think I care about any of that? You should care about it. We live in completely different realities. So did you and Bentley 3 hours ago, but you still risked getting soaked to help him? Liam's voice grew firmer. Different realities don't mean we can't find common ground. Sarah wanted to argue, to list all the logical reasons why this was impossible. But looking at him holding Bentley, seeing the genuine hope in his expression, she found her objections crumbling. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing we find out. I'm proposing I pick you up tomorrow night after your shift and we go somewhere quiet where we can keep talking. I'm proposing we see if this feeling survives daylight and normal circumstances. And if it doesn't, then at least we'll know. But Sarah, what if it does? The possibility hung in the air like a promise. Sarah realized she was holding her breath, balancing on the edge of a decision that could change everything. The smart choice was obvious. Thank him for the lovely evening, send him on his way when the storm cleared, and return to her carefully planned life of school and work and practical decisions. But looking at Liam, at this man who had driven through a dangerous storm for his dog and then sat in a diner all night sharing his loneliness with a stranger, she realized the smart choice and the right choice weren't always the same thing. One date, she heard herself saying. Somewhere quiet, somewhere we can talk. The smile that spread across Liam's face was radiant. One date, he agreed, just talking. Just talking, Sarah confirmed. though they both knew it would be much more than that. The lights flickered back on suddenly, harsh fluorescent brightness flooding the diner and making them both blink. The spell wasn't broken exactly, but the magic shifted, became something more grounded, more real. Bentley stirred at the change in lighting, lifting his head and yawning enormously. "Looks like the storm's passing," Liam observed, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely pleased about it. Sarah glanced toward the windows where the rain had indeed lessened to a gentle patter. Soon the roads would be passable, and this strange, wonderful night would officially end. But something new would begin. "I should probably blow out the candles," she said, though she made no move to do so. "Probably," Liam agreed, also not moving. "Though I have to say you look beautiful in candlelight." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "I look tired in every light." "You look real," he corrected, "genuinely, completely real." "Do you know how rare that is?" Before she could answer, Bentley decided he'd had enough of being still. He scrambled to his feet in Liam's arms and began his campaign for attention, licking every surface of Liam's face he could reach. Both Sarah and Liam laughed, the tension breaking into something lighter but no less significant. "I think someone's ready to go home," Sarah said, reaching over to scratch behind Bentley's ears. The puppy immediately tried to lick her fingers, his tail wagging with renewed energy. "Yeah, he is," Liam agreed, but his eyes never left Sarah's face. "But I'm not ready for this to end." "It's not ending," Sarah said, surprised by her own certainty. "It's just changing." Liam stood carefully, settling Bentley more securely in his arms. "Tomorrow night, what time do you get off work?" 11. "I'll pick you up at 11:15. You don't even know where I live." "I'll figure it out," he said with the confidence of someone accustomed to solving problems. "Unless you'd rather meet somewhere." Sarah considered this. The practical part of her brain suggested meeting somewhere public, somewhere safe, somewhere that didn't involve giving her address to a man she'd known for 4 hours. But the part of her brain that had been awakened by candlelight and honest conversation had a different opinion. "You can pick me up here," she said. "At the diner." "Perfect." Liam reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, then paused. "Actually, forget the business card. That's not who I want to be with you." Instead, he grabbed a napkin from the dispenser and borrowed her pen, scribbling his personal cell phone number across it. "Text me when you get home safe tonight, and tomorrow, and whenever you want to, really." Sarah took the napkin, studying his handwriting. It was neat, controlled, but with little flourishes that suggested creativity lurking beneath the businessman's exterior. "I will." They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to take the steps that would officially end this encounter. Bentley solved the problem by yawning again and settling his head against Liam's chest with obvious contentment. "He's ready for his own bed," Sarah observed. "So am I, actually. But I'm also not ready to stop talking to you." "Then don't," Sarah said simply. "Text me when you get home. Tell me if Bentley settles in okay, if the roads are clear, whatever you want. I'll be up for a while anyway." "Cleaning up?" "Thinking," she admitted. "About tonight, about tomorrow, about what happens when two people from different worlds discover they speak the same language." Liam shifted Bentley to one arm and reached out with his free hand, cupping Sarah's cheek gently. "We speak the same language," he said softly. "I knew it the moment you refused to take money for helping him." Sarah leaned into his touch for just a moment, allowing herself to savor the warmth of his palm against her skin. "I knew it when you held him like he was your child instead of your possession." "Tomorrow," Liam said, and it wasn't a question. "Tomorrow," Sarah confirmed. He headed toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Sarah, thank you for everything. But mostly for reminding me what it feels like to be just a person sitting in a diner talking to someone who sees me. Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be interesting enough to talk to." "You're more than interesting," Liam said. "You're extraordinary." And then he was gone, disappearing into the gentling storm with Bentley secure in his arms. Sarah stood in the doorway watching his taillights fade into the distance, the napkin with his phone number clutched in her hand like a ticket to somewhere she'd never imagined she could go. She locked the door behind her and began the familiar routine of closing down the diner. But everything felt different now. The coffee she dumped smelled richer. The surfaces she wiped seemed to gleam. Even her reflection in the dark windows looked changed, as if the conversation had rearranged something fundamental in her face. As she turned off the lights and gathered her things, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Home safe. Bentley is already asleep on my bed. I think he's dreaming about you. I know I will be. Thank you for tonight. See you tomorrow. Liam." Sarah smiled, typing back quickly. "Glad you're both safe. Tell Bentley he's welcome back anytime. And Liam, tonight was the best shift I've ever worked." His response came immediately. "Best storm I've ever been caught in." Sarah laughed out loud in the empty diner, the sound echoing off the walls and mixing with the gentle patter of rain that was finally, truly beginning to slow. She gathered her jacket and her keys, but before she left, she took one last look around the familiar space. Tomorrow it would just be working at the diner again, with its cracked vinyl and buzzing lights and terrible coffee. But tonight it had been something else entirely. Tonight it had been the place where two lonely people found each other in the candlelight and discovered that sometimes the most important connections happen not in spite of differences, but because of them. As Sarah stepped into the clearing night, she realized that everything about her carefully ordered life was about to change. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she wasn't afraid of change. She was excited for it. Sometimes the most extraordinary moments begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Sarah's decision to brave a storm for a shivering puppy didn't just save Bentley that night. It opened the door to a connection that neither she nor Liam saw coming. What started as a rescue became something much deeper, a reminder that genuine human connection transcends wealth, status, and all the barriers we think separate us from one another. In a world where we often judge people by their bank accounts or their job titles, Sarah and Liam's story show that the most meaningful relationships are built on something far more valuable: compassion. Honesty. The willingness to see someone for who they truly are beneath all the surface details. Sarah didn't see a billionaire that night. She saw a man who loved his dog enough to drive through dangerous weather to find him. Liam didn't see a struggling waitress. He saw someone with the courage to help a creature in need without expecting anything in return. Their story reminds us that magic doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in the form of a lost dog and a stranger's kindness, illuminated by candlelight in an empty diner while the storm rages outside. Sometimes the most important conversations happen not in boardrooms or at fancy restaurants, but in the spaces between one life and another, where pretense falls away and truth has room to breathe. What moments of unexpected connection have shaped your own life? Have you ever found yourself changed by a simple act of kindness, either given or received? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true tales that remind us of the extraordinary power of human compassion. Until next time, keep your eyes open for the magic hiding in ordinary moments.